we are making our way, yeah, westbound 105 now at this point, and Amy, you mentioned riding into the sunset, and yeah, I mean we need to mention that because the sun is going to be setting. Because it's just
vehicle came off the bridge after a collision with another vehicle. So we're not entirely sure right now if this is weather-related or driver-related, so to speak. DC Fire confirming this was a two-vehicle collision. One of the vehicles ended up in the Potomac. Divers coming on scene momentarily. So this is pretty scary. It's scary because it's cold. The snow is coming down. It is accumulating. There you see under the bridge as well. You see that. Wow, look at that. That boat there on the Potomac, ready to hopefully extract this driver and this vehicle, and hopefully everyone's going to be okay here. So we're going to monitor this story throughout the course of the evening here. Also, you see there, the bridge has been closed for the crash investigation. So it's a little after 8 o'clock there in the nation's capital on this very snowy, wintry, cold night. In the meantime, let's move from Washington now to the Middle East. Live picture there over Jerusalem, you see there, nighttime. Well, I want to put up this tweet from Barak Ravid there at Axios. He has this reporting that the Gaza hostage and ceasefire deal has officially been signed in Doha. Sources to Ravid there. Fox's Trey Yingst has more from the region.
Israeli airstrikes killed dozens in Gaza just a day after the announcement of a new ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Negotiators in Qatar brokered the three-phase deal that would see a pause in the fighting, and the hostages returned home in exchange for more aid and the release of hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. But on Thursday morning, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said a last-minute disagreement is delaying his final approval, and he canceled a planned cabinet vote on the deal.
The Israeli government wants this deal to be finalized, but it cannot be a deal which is correct in some places and not in others.
The sticking point appears to be Israel's demand for a veto over which prisoners would be exchanged for the hostages. Hamas claims that was worked out during the negotiations, and it remains committed to the ceasefire deal.
We are now facing a new phase in our proud Gaza, through which we can confirm to the world that we are a free people who build and do not destroy.
Netanyahu could be stalling for time to sell the deal to his more conservative coalition partners. Some have threatened to leave the government if the agreement isn't amended, putting Netanyahu in a difficult position as he also faces pressure from the families of hostages to get the deal done.
We are, as you said, very much in limbo and extremely concerned that our government is not acting in good enough faith to make this happen.
The ceasefire was supposed to go into effect on Sunday, but Netanyahu says there will be no deal until Hamas backs down. In Tel Aviv, Trey Yingst, Fox News.
Trey, thanks so much. So Trey filing that report a little bit earlier today. We're getting some new details about whether or not the deal is final, reported by Axios there. Let's talk about all of this with our friend there, Union for Reform Judaism President, Rabbi Rick Jacobs. He joins me. Rabbi Jacobs, thanks for being with us. We had to get you on. You and I have discussed this topic so often here. Is the deal final, or are there still outstanding snags, would you say?
It seems that there are still some outstanding snags. It may be details of the actual arrangement. You have to remember this is a deal that was largely formulated in May. And it certainly was something we had hoped for in May or June, July, August. And here we are in January. The details matter. The question of which hostages and which prisoners. When we talk about the Palestinian prisoners in Israeli jails, it sounds very benign. But many of those that are scheduled to be released are actually terrorists convicted of murdering many Israelis. So there's a lot of emotion there. But as you also know, there's been a tremendous outpouring of support for this deal from across the political spectrum. But there's also a strong, I would say, far-right group that is protesting against the deal. And they're members of the coalition that are threatening to leave the coalition if the deal goes through. Prime Minister Netanyahu is caught in a web. We were supposed to see on Sunday the first hostages coming free. It was going to be in 3 different tranches, but honestly, it's still a question. And The cabinet has not yet voted to approve the deal. So on Israel's side, it's not absolutely signed. We saw that Barak Ravid said that it was, but honestly, we'll believe it when we see it.
Okay, yeah, I wanted to ask, I mean, is this a good deal? Is it a bad deal? Or is it just a deal?
You know what? If you spend time with the families, as I have, they're desperate.
Yeah.
The longer there is not a deal, the less likely their loved ones are coming home alive. So this is a deal we have to swallow, and to give back these murderers is a hard price. But to get home Israelis who have been spending a year and a half in horrific conditions in the tunnels of Gaza, it simply has to be done. I think the majority of Israelis agree with that. And I think Jews and people of conscience around the world understand that it must happen.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, Rabbi, but the first and only deal that materialized back in November of 2023, did that also require a vote of the entire Knesset like this one?
It was a slightly different arrangement.
I see.
This is multi-phase. And also the question of, does this bring the war to an end? Is it a ceasefire? Is it a temporary truce? All those questions have gotten more heightened.
Okay.
I think we also have to pay attention to the U.S. administration that's been working on this, but credit has to also be given to President-elect Trump. His team, particularly Steve Witkoff, who is his Middle East envoy, has been in Qatar and has been a very important force in bringing the sides together. So a rare expression of partnership between the current American government and the incoming, but for a very noble cause.
To the layperson watching who's not familiar with Israeli politics or Jewish tradition even, could you explain, I'm getting this question from a lot of folks, the imbalance, why is it there? Why does Israel only get 33 of the 100 plus hostages still remaining, yet they have to release hundreds of Palestinian prisoners? Why the imbalance? Why would they go for that deal?
Well, let me put you back a little bit in history. The last major deal that we had going back to Gilad Shalit, one Israeli soldier who was in Hamas's control, he was kidnapped, spent 5 years there. They gave 1,000 security prisoners for the one Israeli soldier. I can't explain to you how that kind of proportion is worked out, but what we know is that is the cost, and it's a cost that has to be paid because these are lives of our loved ones. In the Jewish tradition, the redemption of kidnapped individuals is the highest obligation that we have. And so the cost is heavy, but the urgency and the life-saving quality of this deal is a must.
So does Hamas live to fight another day after and if phase one is complete?
Those are all the big questions, Andrew. After phase one, will there be a phase two? And frankly, you have to remember, Hamas is not a state actor. They're a terrorist organization. And the idea that they will have integrity with commitments that they make is not something that Israelis or, frankly, anybody who's been watching or paying attention. They are greatly degraded. Obviously, the big question also after this ceasefire is what will be next? What will happen to Gaza? Will there be a better tomorrow? Will the people of Gaza, there's so many innocent Gazans who are caught in the midst of this war. They need to have humanitarian aid, but will their future have anything that will resemble a life of dignity? These are all really outstanding questions, and there really are not answers at this moment.
So I think it's so interesting that the Biden-Harris administration, in conjunction with National Security Advisor Sullivan, Secretary of State Blinken, and others, have been working around the clock for months to diplomatically secure this. And then you have some of these incoming Trump administration officials in the mix, and 5 days before he's sworn in as president, there is a deal on the table, and it's almost finalized. To me, that is quite stunning here. Former Democratic Congressman from New Jersey, Tom Malinowski, he tweeted this today, Rabbi. He said this was Biden's deal, but as much as I hate to say it, he couldn't have done it without Trump. Not so much Trump's performative threats to Hamas, but his willingness to tell Bibi bluntly that the war had to end by January 20th. Why didn't Biden ever say that, do you think? Because you and I have discussed Biden and Bibi's very frosty relationship. He could have said that, right?
He could have said it, but it wouldn't have had the effect.
Oh.
I think what Trump has done here, and clearly the Israeli country, if you would have taken an election poll, Israelis were overwhelmingly supportive of Donald Trump. And so Trump is trusted by Bibi as somebody who is going to be there, is going to have Israel's back in all cases. And so when Trump's emissary, Steve Witkoff, said, and Trump directly, Bibi, this is a deal. In fact, the first person to announce the deal was the President-elect Trump. He clearly put the pressure on, and Bibi cannot say no to Donald Trump. And Trump, I think, knows that well.
Okay, lastly, though, on Netanyahu, does he survive this politically? You mentioned already that kind of more right-wing members of his coalition have said, we're out if this goes through. So where does he come out of this?
I think if you had asked people 1 week after October 7th, did Prime Minister Netanyahu have any chance of enduring another month, another 2, another year, the answers would have been absolutely not. He was somebody held responsible for the lack of preparedness. But Prime Minister Netanyahu has reinvented his own leadership. He's gained strength. He's gotten a few more seats on the, on the coalition side. But the truth is, I would never count Netanyahu out unless you see it happen. But I do know that it is possible that his government could fall. And that's also what's going on quietly behind the scenes. He's negotiating to keep his coalition together so he can lead another day. I'm not sure if Israelis were all given the choice, they would want him to continue. But at this moment, that is part of the calculation.
All right, Rabbi Rick Jacobs, we'll leave it at that. But we are anticipating, and we are on the precipice for Sunday to see some of these really emotional, incredible scenes of the release of some of these hostages. We have not seen that since November of 2023, and it will be very, very tough to see those scenes live. We hope to bring it to our viewers. Rabbi, thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, in the meantime here, let's take a quick commercial break. We're going to keep it moving from story to story. This hour in particular, obviously we know that we're about to hear from the Supreme Court on what they will do with this law that bans the popular social media app TikTok. Will they rule to uphold it? Remember, the effect happens on Sunday, January the 19th. The ban goes into effect. So not much time going on. We also know some of these lawmakers who voted for the ban in the first place maybe have some buyer's remorse and are hedging. There's been talk of delaying implementation of the ban. So we're going to break all of that down and more when we come back. And welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andrew Kraft. Well, do you use TikTok? You probably do if you're watching. 150 million people in the United States do. And the ban goes into effect on Sunday, barring any ruling by the Supreme Court to either strike down the law or uphold it. And so we're going to be following this throughout the course of the weekend. Our colleague, Rebecca Castor there at Fox, has a look at what might happen to the popular app. Let's watch.
With a ban on TikTok possibly days away, President-elect Trump and his national security team seem ready to give the social media app a lifeline.
We will put measures in place to keep TikTok from going dark.
How the incoming administration plans to do that, though, remains to be seen. Congress passed a law in April requiring the app's Chinese-based developer to sell TikTok to a U.S. company, after lawmakers warned the Chinese government could be collecting users' data. The deadline for that sale is Sunday.
We want TikTok to survive and flourish. It just can't be under the thumb of the Chinese Communist Party.
TikTok CEO Shou Chu says the potential ban is a violation of free speech and asked the U.S. Supreme Court to weigh in. The justices heard the case last week, but have yet to issue their ruling.
It's kind of ironic that China does not allow an American social media platform that they can't censor or take control over in their country, but yet we allow the CCP to come in here and buy up farmland, buy up land around our military installations.
Amid the legal battle, TikTok CEO is planning to attend Trump's inauguration on Monday, leading some lawmakers to question whether the incoming administration will be tough on China.
And the irony in all this was Donald Trump was the first guy to point out this problem. Matter of fact, his administration had to convince me. They did a great job of convincing me and the overwhelming members of Congress.
The law says if there's a significant deal in the works, the deadline to sell could be pushed back by 90 days. In Washington, Rebecca Castor, Fox News.
Rebecca, thanks so much. In the meantime here, I want to put this up from Fox News Sunday host Shannon Bream. She says, TikTok answer on Friday. SCOTUS releases opinions at 10 a.m. Eastern on Friday. No idea if it will include the decision on the expedited TikTok case, but possible. She says we'll bring it to you as it breaks on Fox News. We'll also bring it to you as it breaks here on Live Now from Fox. In the meantime, I spoke with some experts about what this all means going forward. Have a listen. Adam, good to see you. I know you've been on Live Now talking about this before. What happens on Sunday for everyone who has TikTok on their phone, who uses it on a daily basis? What happens?
Well, as you said, the big question mark is, does the Supreme Court say anything? And so I want to say that this is what we expect to happen absent Supreme Court involvement, so Supreme Court ruling. But I would say, based on the arguments we heard at the Supreme Court last Friday, I don't expect them to save TikTok. So what happens? We know that the law that Congress passed says that app stores, so the Apple App Store and Google Play Store, cannot provide TikTok as a new download as of Sunday. We also suspect, though it's never been confirmed, that any U.S. company cannot host TikTok. So much of TikTok user data is on Oracle services. Oracle's an American company. And so there's been some speculation that it couldn't, the user data for existing users would maybe have to be moved to offshore servers, data centers after Sunday, or to make sure that it's still operable for existing TikTok users. The big question mark is that there have been multiple news reports in the last day that TikTok plans to actually just take the app dark for all Americans, even existing users, not try to move it to offshore data centers, perhaps to show the American people what they'd be losing, perhaps in some kind of strategy to try to get some salvation after that. But that is apparently the company's plan. Well, we don't know that for certain, but that's been reported the last couple days.
So it seems like there's a failure of imagination kind of going on here because there's so many users daily on TikTok to the tune of, 150 million. We just don't know what that landscape looks like. And maybe we will on Sunday, and maybe we won't. But the Biden administration and even some lawmakers who voted for this ban in the first place have come out in recent days and have hedged quite a lot here, saying that they would prefer a delay of implementation. Even the incoming Trump-Vance administration has taken that tack as well. I did not know you could do that with U.S. law that's being adjudicated at the highest court in the land. We have this statement on background from a White House official. They say, quote, "Our position on this has been clear. TikTok should continue to operate under American ownership. Given the timing of when it goes into effect over a holiday weekend, a day before inauguration, it will be up to the next administration to implement." So the Biden-Harris administration leaving the White House, and they're not actively going to enforce this. What do you make of that?
Well, the law that Congress passed does say that this deadline of Sunday, that whoever is president at the time could grant a 90-day extension to that deadline to give ByteDance, which is TikTok's parent company, more time to find a buyer. So that authority exists solely with President Biden, and candidly does not, in my view, extend to President Trump. That's not something that he has the ability to do. The real problem, though, is that ByteDance has shown zero indication of wanting to find a buyer. There are real questions about whether the Chinese government, which ultimately ByteDance has to abide by, will let ByteDance sell TikTok to an American company. And they haven't done anything. This has been, 6 months plus where they could have been making efforts to sell the service, but they haven't. And so I'm very doubtful that any extension of time would lead to any different result. I don't believe the Chinese government wants to allow ByteDance to sell TikTok to anyone.
But TikTok all along has cited free speech grounds as the rationale to fight this. But if you're ByteDance, the parent company, they're not necessarily taking that track here. What do you think their move is? I mean, what will ByteDance do if they don't want it to be sold to an American entity, and there was that report that they might shut it down altogether? That underscores the national security grounds, does it not?
Absolutely. Look, if TikTok was just some harmless video app, I'm not sure the Chinese government would have dug its heels in so deeply to prevent the sale. So the fact that they're resisting it so strongly kind of lends credence to people who say China views TikTok as a national security asset. So I think we ought to view those kind of protests as validation of the original concerns that people have had with TikTok. But I think, if this was if China was kind of a normal country and this was a normal company, I think they would have sold the company to an American owner because it would be validation. Here was a Chinese corporate success story. But I don't believe that's going to happen, because now I think what will happen is it probably will go dark, and President Xi can say, well, look, to the Chinese people, look, this is just another example of those awful Americans mistreating us. They'll use it for domestic propaganda purposes.
So what's so interesting, there seems to be some cognitive dissonance going on here, especially amongst Republicans who arguably are hawks when it comes to China. But they are seemingly singing a different tune here. Incoming National Security Advisor, the Congressman Mike Waltz, he was on Fox the other day. He says the incoming administration will put measures in place to keep TikTok from going dark there. So how do you square those two things? If it is such a national security concern, if China is harvesting data with American users via ByteDance, yet the incoming administration wants to keep it in place or at least delay the implementation, is there a disconnect there?
Yes, and it's all because of Trump. And I want to be clear, this is not about really Republicans. Most Republicans in Congress are still concerned about TikTok's Chinese ownership. But Mike Waltz, used to be a TikTok critic. Now he works for President Trump. Brendan Carr, the FCC chair, incoming FCC chair, used to be a TikTok critic. Now works for President Trump. Trump flip-flopped on China. And he flip-flopped soon after one of his major donors talked to him last year. As one of his major donors is a major U.S. investor in TikTok. And, and since the election, TikTok executives have gotten in front of Trump and said, hey, Trump, look how well your campaign performed on TikTok, playing to his ego. Look, Trump governs from ego, not ideology. And so but I don't think just because Trump has flip-flopped, I don't think that means most members of Congress have flip-flopped. I actually believe, members of Congress have actually written to Apple and Google and Oracle in recent weeks saying, we still expect you to abide by this law, regardless of what Trump or Biden say.
But there are even some Democratic senators who voted for the ban in the first place. I'm thinking Ed Markey of Massachusetts. Today, he introduced legislation to delay the implementation of this ban here. So where are they coming from? Why do they want this delayed?
I think it's just downright weird. They voted for this thing.
Yeah.
They voted for this thing. Yeah, it's bizarre. It's not the. It's certainly not a spine of steel. Look, TikTok has had plenty of time to find a new owner. The fact that they haven't really should just validate Congress's original concerns. I get it, the politicians don't want to be held responsible, but this was all foreseeable. I think it's perfectly acceptable to say TikTok's a great app. We just don't want to have Chinese ownership of one of our most important social media apps. That's was the line that Congress drew last year. It was pretty overwhelming. I think that's where still most members of Congress are.
Yeah, I guess we'll just have to wait and see if the Supreme Court does rule on it. I mean, they will rule on this before Sunday, right?
That's right. Now the question is, would they do have the power to postpone the Sunday deadline? Okay. It's a little strange that if they were going to do that they haven't done that yet. It's frankly very strange that they haven't ruled at all. But I would say most observers of the arguments on Friday seemed to, agreed that the court was leaning against TikTok, was leaning in favor of the national security arguments and against TikTok's First Amendment arguments, as you.
Okay. Yeah. Yep. And no law enforcement at all, no ground units, no helicopter. I got them here, the original two. I think it's the original two. Yeah, the one with the ATV. I think they stopped underneath. They stopped. So they split up and they just stopped underneath, it looks like. Unless they're getting on the freeway. The original two were with a guy on an ATV. They went underneath the bridge here, and I think they're stopped underneath the bridge. Oh, dang it. Seven says he has them. Oh. Yeah, dang it, that was tricky there. They might have. Well, I think we lost them. They have the other group over here. Yeah. Hard to see, they have no lights. Sorry, guys. I didn't see them come out of that bridge, but the on-ramp there at Hoover is really weird. They might have been able to slip on the freeway, but looking on, and of course, they have no lights either, so we don't see them.
well, that the appointment of Moody would clear the field for Byron Donalds to run for governor. Fox was told Moody had also tinkered with running for governor as well here. Have you heard that?
Yeah, I mean, Byron Donalds, he's got some Trump world people behind him. He may be the Trump candidate in the end. Yeah, but other names are going to throw in too. Lieutenant Governor Jeanette Nunez. You can see some people from Congress looking to run besides Byron Donalds. I think it's be pretty crowded. Matt Gaetz is, looked at it also. We'll see if that actually comes to pass. But it's going to be a crowded primary on the Republican side and the Democratic side both. Last time the seat was open, there were two viable Democratic candidates, Ron DeSantis and Adam Putnam, and a number of Democrats who ran. The governor's race, when it's open, is the most live race of any in Florida. A lot of people see themselves having paths getting there. But I do think Byron Donalds is a very strong candidate.
Okay.
You could even see First Lady Casey DeSantis running in the end.
Oh, wow.
You never know.
So, AG, just lastly, though, we're talking about the upcoming governor's race in 2026, though. Moody is just going to fill this seat until the term expires, and then there will be a Senate race for the full 6-year term here. Who's in the mix for that? Are we getting too ahead of ourselves here, or no?
There are people talking about challenging her. Representative Corey Mills, he wanted to be the DeSantis appointee to the seat. He said he is thinking about running in 26. Other people will also. You see Democrats look at it also, but when you look at what happened in the last couple of election cycles in Florida, Republicans have dominated. And I think being the incumbent, Ashley Moody will consolidate very quickly.
Okay.
She will have Trump's backing. She will have DeSantis' backing. I don't think there's really a path to challenge her as an incumbent in the seat. She's got 2 years to get a campaign apparatus going. She knows what she's doing, and she will be a prohibitive favorite.
All right, AG Gankarski, we're going to have to leave it at that. Always good to see you, AG. We'll talk soon.
Hey, thanks a lot, Andrew.
All right, in the meantime here, we're about to watch the announcement made by Governor DeSantis today with Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody, who will fill the vacant Senate seat there, left by Marco Rubio, who, for all intents and purposes, is expected to be confirmed as Trump's next Secretary of State. In the meantime here, let's move from Florida briefly, though, to Ohio. Remember, there is an open Senate seat, a vacant seat in Ohio as well. The Washington Post has this, our friend Jeff Stein, that President-elect Donald Trump is encouraging Vivek Ramaswamy to take the Ohio Senate seat vacated by J.D. Vance's departure. He says it's unclear what this would mean for DOJ, which Trump picked Ramaswamy and Musk to lead in November. Of course, the Senate decision is up to Ohio's governor, the Republican Mike DeWine. So the question is, what will Governor DeWine do about this already vacant seat of Vance? Remember, Vance resigned his Senate seat last week. Fox is told Trump has advocated DeWine to appoint Vivek Ramaswamy. Ramaswamy is an Ohio native. Now, Vance's successor would then have to run in a primary and special election in 2026 to fulfill the remainder of Vance's term, and then he'll have to run for a full term in 2028 here. So wanted to make sure we got that in. In the meantime, from Ohio, back to Florida, here's Governor DeSantis.
Time for Washington, D.C. to deliver results to the American people. There are no more excuses for Republicans. We can't choose the easy path here. We must be able to do what it takes, make the hard decisions necessary to usher in a revival of the American experiment. Now, President Trump's election was remarkable, and he earned a mandate for change. And yes, the results themselves, winning the popular vote, winning the swing states, was certainly something that's noteworthy. But what was more noteworthy is no candidate has ever had to endure a flurry of bogus prosecutions and 2 assassination attempts and having the entire legacy media apparatus doing everything they can to prevent his return to office. So we as Republicans cannot squander this opportunity. And that means we need a Congress, both the House and the Senate, that will rise to the occasion and make history. No more business as usual in Washington, D.C. Now, of all the issues that the American people rendered a verdict on, there's perhaps no issue that's been more significant over these past 4 years than immigration and the open southern border. The American people do not want to have our borders opened. We are a sovereign nation, and we must control who comes into our country on the terms that we as Americans set. That means we not only need to support President Trump's agenda to secure and shut the border, but we also need to make sure that we're enforcing the laws inside the United States. We've called the special session of the Florida legislature because Florida is going to be working with the Trump administration to make sure our immigration laws are enforced. I don't want to see some illegal alien gang just be able to operate and then you only do anything once they've already committed serious crimes. Identify them and get them out of the country. We must make illegal immigration illegal once again. The other issue that clearly animated voters' momentous decision in November is the economic crunch facing people all across the United States of America. This economic crunch is government-induced. We are currently now, thanks to federal policies, locked in a vicious cycle of deficits, debt, money printing, and crushing inflation. We need Republicans in the Congress to stop this spending spree once and for all. Downsize the federal government, eliminate wasteful programs, abolish certain agencies, and empower the states to take over the functions that our founding fathers originally intended. Florida has shown that this can be done. We have cut taxes every year since I've been governor. I have had the opportunity to veto billions and billions of dollars in wasteful spending, and we have paid down 36% of the state's historical debt. From the 1840s to the present, we've paid down 36% just since 2019, and it's not an accident that because of those policies, since I took office in 2019, Florida leads the nation in economic growth amongst all 50 states. We've shown it can be done. They need to get it done.